Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the 1% Better Recruitment Podcast. I'm your host, Charles Kiriakou. I say another episode. This isn't really a normal episode. There's no guest, as you can see, just Marshall, who, if you've watched and listened to episodes on this orange couch, you know that he's the main star of the show, right? But today is a slightly different episode. I wanted to do just talk about a few things, really. Talk about essentially 2025, like the episode, some of the highlights, what's happened, some plans for 2026, and of course share a lot of gratitude, because without the guests, without people that listen to the podcast, it wouldn't be where it is today. And for sure, with the plans I have moving forward, it's not going to be anywhere near where it's going to be without those people. So we'll talk about that in more detail. Another thing I did want to mention as well is that last week I checked my Spotify for like the creators account and saw the analytics on there. And when I looked at that, because I don't really look at analytics for my podcast an awful lot because it's still quite new. And for anyone out there considering doing a podcast, if you look at your analytics in the first year, it can be a bit depressing, if I'm honest with you. It takes a little while for it to like get quite good. But I noticed there was something like 220 plus people that had my podcast or this podcast in their top 10. I think there was about 30 odd people that had me in their top, like as number one on Spotify. I thought that was absolutely insane. And then I was looking through the subscribers I have for the newsletter on LinkedIn, and I just thought I'd message people and say, thanks very much for subscribing, how you enjoying the podcast, etc., etc. And a few people were saying, yeah, I listen to it every single day. Some people listen to it on the way to work, on the way home, etc., etc. So yeah, there's loads to talk about during this episode. If we just go back in time quickly, because I get asked a lot by people, like, why did you set this podcast up? I think for a lot of people, they think when someone starts a podcast in an industry like recruitment, it's simply for a business development tool. Now, I'll be very honest, it's a bloody good business development tool. I've won a lot of business off the back of it, and I'm sure I will in 2026. However, I've always wanted to do podcasting. I set up a podcast back in 2018, I think it was, with a colleague, and I just fell in love with it. I loved sitting down and having like a real deep conversation one-on-one with someone for an extended period of time. It's quite rare that you get a chance to do that with people. Like when you're with your friends, it's not every day that you sit down and have like an hour-long conversation with someone. So the real reason why I started it and why I called it the 1% Better Recruitment Podcast is because I've only ever really worked in recruitment. I've never really done any other industry. So for me, this industry has given me everything. It's given me this house, my car, the ability to, raise a family, like everything. It's done so much to me. So I wanted to give back. And the reason why it's called the 1% Better Recruitment Podcast is that if people tune into the podcast and find one thing every week that makes them 1% better, ain't that a good thing? Right? Now, from my perspective, like when you hear 1% better, you might think, oh God, it's just going to be pure high performance and it's going to be like hustle culture and stuff. Like, don't get me wrong, we have people on and we talk about that type of stuff, but anyone that has listened to this podcast for more than just an episode or two hopefully realizes that it's not just the standard everyday type of, businessy type of podcast. We have a lot of fun. And I know I say that a lot, like during like the intro of many episodes and stuff, but we genuinely have so much fun on this podcast. I personally think, because I've been a recruiter for so many years, and I'm turning 32 as this episode comes out. If I'm a recruiter, if I was 20-year-old me, would I want to listen to a podcast that's like, probably not. And look, I'm sure there are people out there that would prefer this podcast to be a little bit more like less swearing and less crazy anecdotes that aren't recruitment orientated, but that's just me. And I enjoy doing that. And I think, and again, this is like a tip for people as well, thinking about doing your own podcast or doing video content and stuff, that if you try and do something that isn't you, people just sniff it a mile away. So yeah, hopefully, anyway, that's a little rant on that. Hopefully people understand kind of why the podcast exists, the philosophy behind the name, my style and things like that. Let's talk about 2025 then, the reflection. So I said to myself when I set this podcast up, I did some research. I want this to not come across to people as like a cash grab. I didn't want to do a podcast and after like 5 or 10 episodes go, oh, this is like really arduous, it's quite long, can't be asked anymore. I said to myself, every single Tuesday, I'm going to release an episode. And if there's a Tuesday that I've missed that month or the month before, there will be, instead of 4 episodes, 5 episodes or whatever. I looked at the numbers on YouTube earlier, 52 episodes this year. So this episode's coming out 23rd of December, right? 52 episodes in the year of 2025. There's been the newsletter going out. I've been putting up at least 2 to 3 like short form clips on TikTok every single week as well. I'll be very honest, guys, it's hard. it's bloody hard. When you're doing it all by yourself, I've set up Milo with 2 other trainers. We've had meetings every single week, meeting people as well outside of us 3. My coaching business as well, like being on site, delivering coaching training services, trying to win new business to deliver that type of stuff. Like, it is really, really hard. But what gets me through it is the fact that I treat this almost like a hobby and a side business kind of thing. I actually really enjoy it. So although when it's like Sunday evening and I'm like, shit, I need to edit the podcast for the next day, I do just get it done. But we'll talk a little bit about this in terms of my plan for 2026 and sponsorships and stuff. But hopefully in the new year, when things start taking off with Milo and other bits and bobs, then, it might be a case we have an editor. It can increase the production quality of the podcast, because at the moment I'm recording on a Osmo DJI Pocket 3, something or the other. It's 4K. It's pretty cool. You've got the lapel mics and stuff, but I don't have the lighting set up. I do it in my front room, right? But when it comes to the editing, I use like iMovie, so it might be good to have someone to make it look a little bit snazzier and stuff. So that'll go into the new year. What else was I going to talk about? 2025 reflection. We'll talk about the Spotify Wrapped highlights, actually. So I've got it in front of me here. For people that saw my LinkedIn post, then I'm kind of going back over this, but I won't spend too long on this. But I basically took all the data from Spotify, because that's where most people listen, tune in, watch, etc. I did cross-reference on YouTube and Apple, and it's pretty similar. So I'll quickly bang through these. And if you haven't listened or watched any of these episodes, genuinely, I highly recommend it. So the number one across all platforms at the minute is episode 62 with Jay Gurney from Projectus. So fun story with Jay, I interviewed him in January 2020. We offered him to come and be my resourcer, essentially. We went into COVID a couple of months later, and he ended up having to working a warehouse and delivering, doing Uber Eats and stuff for 6 months. And then eventually, when we started to drip out of the sort of lockdowns, we gave him a job as a research associate, etc. And 5+ years later, he's global top biller, living out in Austin, absolutely smashing it. And that whole episode was all about habits that make a top biller and mastering business development and recruitment. So massive episode, that one. Number 2, now this episode and number 1, they just keep there'll be an extra couple of downloads for one, an extra couple of downloads for the other. So I would basically say that both of these are number 1 and number 2. But number 2, one of my favorites, is with Emily White at Sourcewell. And shout out to Sourcewell, first sponsor for the podcast. This whole episode was about how to master cold outreach, crush BD calls or cold calls, and build your personal brand. So like many people, if you are on TikTok and you use it for work, you will have seen Emily White on there. And I saw her at the Recruitment Agency Expo back in March this year. And we got speaking and said, yeah, it'd be great to get you on the pod. And you'll see on the thumbnail, we're both laughing. It was just such a great episode. I really enjoyed it. And because of her, another shout out to Emily, we got the sponsorship with Sourcewell, which I'll talk about in a minute. Episode 3 with Mark Burgess. Basically, he talks about how you can't automate your way to a £1 million desk. He and I spoke a lot at length about AI. Is it going to replace recruiters, and what is a good BD process, etc., for you to be a top biller and bill £500,000, £1 million, etc. And he does everything in the contract space. Fun story about Mark as well. I'm pretty sure we had a back and forth on a LinkedIn post. Can't remember what it was. I think he misspelled something on the LinkedIn post, and I commented saying surely this has got to be satire, or this is world-class rage bait. And then several months later, he's come on the podcast. I've done some work with him, so that was good. Number 4 was episode 55 with Reese Warren. So he worked at a company called Few and Far, was really successful there, left to go and set up his own thing, lives out in Dubai. Anyone that's watched that episode, we did that in the Vertical Drop studio, so shout out to those guys. His little 1%, just do it. If you're ever thinking about setting up your own business, do it. Bloody brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. But no, that was a really, really good episode. Talks all about BD process, a little bit about what it's like living out in Dubai, and the Instagram people and the LinkedIn people. Oh, Dubai is amazing. He kind of breaks it down in real terms and explains what that's like. So that was a wicked episode. Number 5, episode 50 with Elaine Tyler. So fun story with Elaine. So her investor is James Caan. So anyone that remembers Dragon's Den, etc. So she talked a little bit about investment, what it takes to be a great recruiter, a great founder. That was a wicked episode. We did that one remotely, and I'm hoping to, in the new year, maybe get back on the podcast and do it in person. But that episode did really, really well. Episode 48, number 6 in the rankings, was with Jack Salmon. So Jack is a high performance coach. And this is one of those episodes where, like, again, if you talk about like addiction, drug addiction, alcoholism, partying, and just like all that type of stuff on a recruitment podcast, some people might raise their eyebrow and go like, whoa, is that a little bit unprofessional? But man, we talked about his story in a lot of detail. And it's really inspirational. He's done like Ironmans now. He's worked with so many people in the recruitment industry, talks about performance, purpose, passion. And he shared so many high performance tactics and habits that work for recruiters. So that was episode 48, and that was number 6 in the rankings. So go and check that one out. Number 7 with my boy, Fraser Graham. So Fraser and I have spoken for a little while. He set up a podcast with another friend of mine, Callum. I went on his podcast, got some business off the back of it, and I was like, mate, I've got to have you on my podcast now as well. And he talks about something that I love. It's called polite persistence. And this whole episode was about stop chasing quick wins and master the long-term relationships. And the episode absolutely slapped. It was amazing. And he talked about some really, really cool techniques on what you can do in your email campaigns, texting, and of course on the phone to candidates and clients. But it's all about that long-term stuff. And that episode was great. Episode 37, 8th in the rankings. So when I first spoke to this person, I think I saw her comment on Leisha Holmes's post, and I looked at her profile and I was like, right, I've got to get in touch with this person. Amy Hambleton from Redlaw. She was a lawyer, then she set up a recruitment business, and she bills 7 figures, and she's a mum, and she's running the business with her business partner. I remember speaking to her on the phone and saying, you have to come on the podcast. And she was like, oh, I don't know, what am I going to speak about? I was like, mate, forget the listeners, forget anyone else. I want to know how the hell you do it. Like, that's insane. And then when she explained some of the key things, I was like, wow, these are just the basics, but she does the basics so well. And her market intel is just so incredible, obviously being an ex-lawyer herself. But that episode itself was just, yeah, I was so excited to do that one. Episode 9. So I'll tell you guys a fun story about Will. So Will Pringle, not episode 9, episode 35, number 9 in the ranking. So Will is he's 26, or he might be a little bit older now, 26 years old as of recording this episode, managing director of a company called Big Blue. I saw that he had subscribed to my newsletter on LinkedIn, and they do D&B recruitment, design and build and construction. I had no idea. For people that don't know, I'm obsessed with drum and bass. It's the only genre of music I listen to. So I DM'd him saying, oh my God, I've never seen a recruitment business that do D&B recruitment. Insane. Then I looked and it said design and build. So I was like, yeah, I've just realised it's design and build, my bad. He obviously found it funny. We booked a meeting straight after. He's come on the podcast, and that was the very first podcast, actually, that we did at the house. And as you'll see on the thumbnail as well, you've got Marshall Kiriakou, the young man here. But that whole episode was all about how he does 500k a year plus managing the entire office and everything around the business. So that was a wicked episode. And then finally, episode 66, number 10 in the rankings, Brandon White. Another interesting, there's always an interesting story in there. I spoke to a business that were looking for senior recruiters. I did a LinkedIn post. He commented, got like 40 plus people liked his comment. I read his comment and thought, it doesn't look like he's gunning for me, but it seems like he might be gunning for me. So I just DM'd him and I was like, educate me. And we spoke on the phone and we just got on like a house on fire. So the whole episode there was just all around people want $1 million billings, but they don't want the 1 million biller sacrifices. And we talked all about that, his story in Rec to Rec, how he set up this community and stuff. So yeah, that was a wicked episode. So they were the top 10 episodes. So that's the Spotify Wrapped section. As I mentioned, of course, the start of the year when I was setting out my goals for the podcast, one of my big goals was getting my first sponsorship. Now, I've had a variety of different businesses reach out to me, and I've reached out to some businesses, but when I kind of meet with them or like see the tech, etc., I'm a little bit skeptical. And I always thought that the first sponsor I get will be a reflection of the podcast. So if I get some CRM that I don't personally buy into, like I wouldn't use, or some AI product that I really just don't rate, and that's my first sponsor, people might think it's a bit of a cash grab. So I thought, you know what? I'll wait. And I kind of stopped going out for sponsorship. And then I went to the Sourcewell product launch event in London, saw Dougie, who's been on the podcast. It's coming out in 2026, by the way. And he just sat down and said, as Emily told you, by the way, the episode that you guys did was so good. And yeah, we want to sponsor you. You can imagine at that point, I've had several drinks as well. I just wanted to get on my knees and cry. I was like, oh my God, it's happening. I was like, oh my God. But no, it's been amazing working with them. The sponsorship started in December. I'm working with their partnership team, and there's some big plans with those guys. So a quick thing as well, I might have mentioned this in some of the episodes, but when I first set my coaching business up, Dougie actually reached out to me after I messaged him saying any tips. And he said, you Sourcewell? And I was like, yeah, cool. All right, cheers, mate. And he went, no, I'll give you Sourcewell for the first 12 months just to get you on your feet. He didn't need to do that. Do you know what I mean? I've used it as an L&D person. I've helped people. I've trained people on it. I've worked with them to help train the people at my old company. He didn't need to do that. Do you know what I mean? And it's such an amazing product. And for me to have a company that I really solely believe in, now I can wax more lyrical about them. It's like a dream come true. So big shout out to the guys at Sourcewell. So a couple of other things. As I probably said at the start, I just wanted to say my gratitude for the people that have come on the podcast. Now, for people that have been invited on podcasts before, sometimes when you see a podcast that's quite new, you're a little bit skeptical about going on it. So obviously the first 5-10 guests largely were people that are kind of new, but there's been so many people that they didn't need to come on the podcast. So big shout out to the people that have come on the podcast. Baby started crying. Right, we're going to try the rest of this with Millie in my hands, which was going to be one thing I was going to talk about a little bit later, which was some reflection on my personal life and stuff. Obviously having a baby. I don't think she's actually made an appearance on the podcast, so hopefully you don't freak out. She's just had a nappy change, so this is proper dad multitasking, isn't it? So yeah, what was I saying? So I was talking about the gratitude for the guests. So yeah, a lot of people have trusted me with deep personal stories. They've talked really truthfully, honestly about their strategies and tactics. We've had people come on talking about selling £2.1 million RPOs. They didn't have to say kind of what things they did to help the industry. So massive shout out to every single person that has come onto the podcast, because they've literally made what it has been today. The other thing was the people listening. So the people that like and comment on the stuff on LinkedIn, engage with the newsletter, but also the people that listen and watch in the background. I was thinking about this the other day. Do I really like and comment on many podcasts on YouTube? Not really. I subscribe to a lot of them, but I don't really engage in an awful lot of them. So for the people that listen to the episodes, whether it's weekly or you just, you see someone you like, etc., massive shout out to you guys, because yeah, what's the point in doing a podcast if no one listens, right? As much as this is fun, it does rely on people listening to this. So yeah, if you're listening to this on commutes, your walks, at the gyms, in between calls, whatever it is, I've seen the numbers grow massively this year, especially on Spotify. I think there was a crazy stat, 680% growth this year, which is just, yeah, mental. The next thing I was going to talk about was what the podcast has become. So you've probably noticed I've done a lot more at my house, done some in podcast studios, etc. In 2026, I want to transition to do 90% in person. One of the reasons why I did largely a lot of them remotely is because when you're doing a podcast and it's new and you ask someone to come and meet you in London in a studio or, whatever it is, you need to have done it for a little bit of time, I think, personally. So I just thought, sod it, let's just get some episodes done, get them remote, get me into a bit of a flow and a cadence of what the hell I'm actually doing. And then once I've done that and I realised, actually, this ain't the worst spot in the world. I've got a decent little camera. I've got lapel mics. I could probably do a lot of them at the house. So yeah, a lot of them have been a little bit more in person now. So I want to keep that up. But people that listen to this podcast quite regularly, they know that every episode follows a similar format, but every episode is quite different. So you have some episodes that are very informative, very tactical and strategic. And then you have some episodes that are quite emotional, and you've got people sharing stories about being addicted to drugs or, losing a child or whatever it is. So, obviously every episode finishes off with the same question, which is following today's episode, how do people get 1% better in recruitment? But I like a bit of variety. but I'm also open to what people think as well, right? So if you prefer certain types of episodes, but you're happy for me to do others or whatever it is, like always happy and open to hear people's feedback. Final thing here was the personal reflection. So 2025 has been a pretty nutty year. Obviously, I'm with the baby right now, but yeah, becoming a dad, that has been very challenging, I'll be honest. Like, been great, don't get me wrong, but doing the coaching business, trying to set up Milo, the podcast, trying to be a good husband and being a good dad and taking the dog out and, all that type of stuff has just it's been really like taxing, but I've loved every minute of it, to be honest. I have loved every minute of it. I always think that you shouldn't be complacent, but you should be happy with what you have achieved and grateful for what you have, but you should still have the ambition and drive to go for more. So 2026, now I'm starting to get into a little bit of a flow because Millie's nearly 6 months now. Hopefully in 2026, I'll be a little bit more, I don't know, you kind of know the certain little signs and stuff like that with the baby. So hopefully in 2026, I'll be able to go a little bit more hell for leather with things. And with the podcast, of course, like I said, I want to do a lot more face-to-face. And I think that's something for people. If you are listening and got this far, like I would really appreciate more people recommending people. Like the last few guests have been referrals. So more people you can recommend. And if you are someone that's interested in coming on the pod, I'm always interested. As long as you're fun, as long as you've got passion and you're not just going to talk like a bloody robot, like I'm not going to talk to you if you're a robot, simple. But if you've got passion and got some wicked insights, or even if you don't and you just want to share your story and you think it's interesting for people to learn from, let's chat. Yeah. Cool. I think that's it, guys. So 2025, pretty incredible year for the pod. Got our first sponsorship. 2026, I'm hoping, fingers crossed, touch wood, we'll at least get 1 or 2 more sponsors on top of that. That will help take the production level of the podcast to the next level, free up my time to do other things and make sure the podcast looks even better for you guys. But yeah, ultimately, for people that do listen to this podcast, even if you only listen to a few and you're listening to this now, or you are a weekly 1%er, I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Thank you so much, because I really enjoy doing this. I find it a lot of fun. And I hope that you guys have got as many insights as possible. So let's see where we go in 2026, but it's not going anywhere. I'm not one of those, get to a few episodes and then we're done. We're at, I think, 70 plus episodes now, right? So 2026, we're going to hit the 3 figures, hit over 100 episodes. So yeah, I'm excited. So yeah, thank you very much, guys. And we will be back, I think, week commencing the 5th. So whatever Tuesday that is, I think it might be the 6th, we'll be back. So we're going to take some time off for Christmas. So have a great Christmas, New Year, and I'll see you in 2026.